Great classic races of the springtime. We've now moved across Belgium from the region of the Tour of Flanders. We are now in the Ardennes, and the 66 running of the Fleche Wallonne. Here for you are a few of the most recent winners. I'm Phil Liggett, of course, joined in the commentary box by Paul Sherwin. This race, as usual now, traditionally so, the Fleche Wallonne travelling from Charleroi to Huy. Now Huy, especially the finishing line, is on top of a brute of a climb, which the riders climb a number of times. As we look at the leaders of previous years here, the men have made the top. We're going down to the leaders now of the race at the moment, and we're going to join Walter Bennett of Team Bonjour, Jens Heppner of Team Telecom, and a rejuvenated Alex Zülle back in the thick of things, riding for Team Coast. We're in Stray, and we're just about 90 kilometres from the finish.
Well, it's great to see Alex Zülle here in the yellow strip of Team Coast, Phil, riding, I think, a very good season so far. His team obviously looking for selection in the upcoming Tour de France, and with performance like this in the early season classics, this is a good chance they will have of getting picked up by the Society Tour de France, who are the organisers of this race and, of course, of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Jens Heppner, great to see him in the action as well, Phil, always a stalwart for Team Telecom. And Walter Bennett, the man at the back there in the blue jersey of Team Bonjour, he's a man who I think Jean-René Bernadeau, who's in actually the team car there right now, has an awful lot of confidence in.
Well, there are 10 listed climbs in this race. There are plenty more in this region, of course. Alex Zülle coming up with some great form this year. Nice to see him back in the frame. He was second overall right out at the beginning of the year in the Tour de Algarve, a race in Portugal. And then he came up with the overall win in the Tour of Valencia. So let's hope Alex is back. We'd like to see him ride at least one more Tour de France. These two riders getting away, getting together, feeling good. Remember, this used to be a one day of a weekend. We used to call it the Ardennes weekend, coupled up the very next day with Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Now that's moved out to the weekend, and that is the one with the World Cup ranking, the oldest professional classic in the world. And of course, we'll bring that to you on video later. But right now, we're looking here as though we've got a few riders, Paul, getting away from the field here and trying to reunite at the front.
It's always a strange race, I think, the Fleche Wallonne, because it's caught in between two classics, and it's also a time of change for the riders too, because it's here at the Fleche Wallonne and of course Liège-Bastogne-Liège that we start to see the riders who are going to be competitive in the Grand Tours coming to the front for the first time. This was usually the first time we ever caught a glimpse of Miguel Indurain in his big days, and unfortunately we're not getting a glimpse of Lance Armstrong here. Although he did ride the Tour of Flanders, he should be present at the weekend in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But we are seeing great climbers like Paolo Bettini just at the back here, Phil. Sylvain Chavanel is here for France. Zampieri is in there for Switzerland. Andrea Perron as well, who is in there for the CSC team. He has managed to make this split, but the three leaders at the moment are all working exceptionally well together.
It's good to see too that Levi Leipheimer of Rabobank, remember he's on Rabobank this year, having moved across from Lance Armstrong's US Postal team, because he wants to lead the Rabobank team in the upcoming Tour de France. That team an automatic selection. Now into a move, because it's around this time of the year when the riders must start to show they are moving gently towards the form they will require. This is the month of April. Tour de France, of course, is July, but it's now when they start to look at the form shaping up for that big race. And Leipheimer there in this move that's chasing down these riders if they get up here, of course. Latest time check we've got is just on 2 minutes behind. Oh, here we go. Looking on the top, 2:15 now to that chase group, but only 5 seconds back to the peloton, so they might well get swept up.
Talking about transfers as well, another man who's riding the race today, Tyler Hamilton, transferred across from the US Postal Service team this winter. He's a teammate of Andrea Perron, who was in that small group going across there, and Tyler really getting himself into action for the first serious time this year, Phil. Although he has put an awful lot of time training down in Spain, I think right now we'll be looking to him to get ready for the big stage races coming up.
Walter Bennett, Bonjour, also looking for their place in the Tour. I, for one, think that they will get that place because they had such a good Tour last year, and of course they're French, which will go down a lot in the way of helping them with the organisation.
It also helps if your team manager's name is Jean-René Bernadeau as well. Bernadeau, always a great competitor, a winner 4 times of the Midi Libre, but he is very popular with the race organisation. And the fact is, his team is aggressive. They do come out. They have a very good, strong man on their team by the name of Didier Rousse, who was super aggressive impressive in the Tour de France last year.
A bit of a close-up shot here, our cameraman getting caught there with that right-hand turn, and it looks to me as though that group of riders has been swept up. They pounced on them very, very quickly, probably because Paolo Bettini was in there. Leipheimer also one for the books to be watched now, and other good riders like Alberto Martinez of the Euskaltel-Euskadi team also in that early move. But they're back in the pack. The day turning out a lot better than we anticipated here, because a few days ago at Paris-Roubaix it was rather wet and a bit chilly, and it's been quite cold generally here for springtime. But only a gentle breeze blowing from the southwest today. Most pleasant day for a bike race, and a lot of action as they try to break them up just now.
Well, in fact, this part of Belgium, Phil, it can change in around about 12 hours. It can go from glorious sunshine to rain and snow coming down. I've seen that so many times in the past. We are really in the very heart of the Ardennes, and it can get very cold up here at this time of the year. But the general regrouping there, you can see this is still a very large group left in the chase of the three leaders, who are around about 2¼ minutes up the road right now. But the fact that that group is in a very long line goes to indicate the hammer is on. You can see there are still 5 very difficult climbs to go to the finish. The most difficult, of course, really is the final climb, the Mur de Huy.
But before then, of course, they're not far away now from the Côte de Paille. This is a long main road climb, this one, and it's one taken on the big ring. There you've got the gaps at the top. That little group is still just off the front, look, by a few seconds. 69 kilometres from the finish. That's about 46 miles to go. And that wind playing no part today, but there's a lot of bike riders down there clearly want to get this race underway. This is the loop. We've been through Huy once. Casagrande, by the way, was up near the front over the top of the Huy first time through the finishing line. Now we're on the big loop here, and the riders here just trying to get this breakaway underway. Not an easy thing to do, because we're looking at a race distance just under 200 kilometres, about 123 miles. A nice little warm-up for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but for some of the bike riders, they'll be looking to win this.
You can see how serious they are about winning this too, because that big long line, I tell you, the place not to be is around about 10th or 12th position right now, because you are grappling to stay on the tail of the man right in front of you. Once moving very much to the front. I thought I caught the sight of one of the US postal riders moving forward there right now. Neither Lance Armstrong nor George Hincapie have opted to take part here in the Fleche Wallonne today, but they will be taking part in Liège-Bastogne-Liège at the weekend. We are now entering the province of Liège. We're actually not too far away from Liège at the finishing line. We're only about 40 kilometres. This is the flatter part of the course, but it really does become rather undulating towards the finishing line.
But just look at this line at the back. It is very, very hard now for the riders at the tail of this peloton, because they're on the whip end of it now, holding on to the back wheels. Every time there's a change of direction, it really is hard to make up. Ramelot is where we are now. It's a lovely part of Belgium, this. Complete contrast to the Flanders area. It's the same country, two very distinct regions. Now, is this Martinez here still in this breakaway, trying for Euskaltel on the left of our pictures? We look at it, and we've got one on the CSC. That'll be Andrea Perron, I think, also on the front here. So this little breakaway has not been caught, Paul, but it's dangling off the front like a carrot.
They're still dangling. Perron very active on the front there in the red and white jersey. He wants to try and break it up. This is the wrong place to do it. Once we get to the next few climbs, I think we will see a selection by elimination from the rear in this race right now. A lot of riders will start to drop off the back. It is a very difficult finish here at Huy to climb up this Mur for the last time. And in fact, you can see this is a huge peloton still left in the bike race. Very often, Phil, the first time we do get to the Mur de Huy, we lose 40 or 50 bike riders, because then they have to go out on this big large loop into the countryside, and most of the guys know where the showers are, and they pull off at Huy for the first time through.
Yes, they're no fools. They're not going to face it if they're having a bad day. These three boys are still clear here. Walter Benetto, he's the Bonjour rider on the front as we speak, from France, of course. Alex Zülle of Switzerland in the centre, and the team manager alongside him now, chatting him up and telling him what to do. And number 53 is Jens Heppner, the tough former East German cyclist on Eric Zabel's Telecom team.
Well, Heppner at the back there, he's been a professional since 1991. It's good to see Team Coast riding aggressively so early on in the season. Team manager coming up alongside them there. In fact, I think Alvaro Pino is the man in the car today with these guys. He'll be having a quick word with Alex Zülle in Spanish. Although this is a German team, Alex Zülle rode for many years for the top Once squad and then switched across to Banesto. Now leading this small coast team, a German team which has really sprung up from almost nothing over the last couple of years. His teammate Fernando Escartin will be hoping that this team will qualify for the Tour de France later in the season. they will have to garner selection to get into that race. The three leaders, Phil, they still have a very smart advantage, and although the pressure is on in the main field, these three guys are still holding on to around about a 2-minute lead.
Well, noticing there too, they've swept up now all of the chasers, so we've just got the three leaders and the main pack, and you can see now they've calmed down a little bit now as they clog up the whole road here. Very narrow roads in this part of Belgium generally. Lovely place to go cycle touring, and some very steep climbs hide in the Ardennes hills as well, where you need really low gears, as we'll find out when we move over for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because the climb of La Redoute does require a very low gear. That comes near the end of that classic race. Now, all back together again. You can employ a different tactic here, can't you, Paul, when the roads are so narrow, because you can use your teammates to literally block the road.
Well, you can. It's rather strange right now to see at this stage of the Fleche Wallonne race so many riders still in with a chance of coming up with the victory. Normally by now I would have expected to see a main field of only around about 50 riders, but there are certainly an awful lot more than that. A lot of teams blocking up to the front right now. I think they've decided to put the white flag up. We'll have a truce for a short while until we get to the next big climbs, but in fact, as I said that, somebody from Faso-Bortolo, it looks very much like Michele Bartoli's style, has leapt off the front end of this main field. He's hit them pretty hard here, and I don't think anybody wanted this right now.
Well, that's definitely the style of Bartoli. He's got this pursuiter style. He seems to always have his frame and extension a little bit shorter than most. As he relaxes on the handlebars there, using those powerful legs, Bartoli fighting back. He'll look to try and lead his team in the upcoming Giro d'Italia this year. Looks over his shoulder, finds everybody's come with him, so he thinks, right, if you're all coming with me, then come to the front and do your share of the pacemaking.
Well, it was a good move there. He just hit them just at the moment. Everybody seemed to be relaxing, taking on board food and drinks, trying to get themselves topped up in energy. But I think the weather has had an awful lot to play with today's race, Phil, because it hasn't been the typical Belgian weather, the typical Flandrian weather that we had on the other side of the border. But in fact, right now, the weather has been fairly clement for the Ardennes, which is why I think we've still got an awful lot of bike riders in this race. The three leaders, Alex Zuller riding absolutely superbly so far this season, a very good start of the year in February, and that seems to be continuing right now. He's put all of his problems and his association with the Festina affair behind him, and now trying to ride out the last couple of years in his career, and hopefully we'll see him on the roads of the Tour de France later this season, because I still think that Alex Zuller's got a part to play in the mountains.
Well, people who know Alex Zuller say he's a really great guy. We don't know him that well. I remember when he first came to the Tour de France, he came as a billed as a superstar. He got the lead and they pulled him out of the race on his birthday, on the rest day, saving him till he was more mature to go the distance. But he has never achieved that ambition, which was, of course, to win the Tour de France. A challenger, a top three finisher, but never the winner.
He's always tried. He's been up there. He was beaten a little while ago by a certain man by the name of Lance Armstrong. But this man has always been a competitor. He's always been able to keep his form for the month of July for the Tour de France. But right now, he's actually looking for selection for that great bike race. In the group behind Phil, they are all across the road right now, so that will bode well for the three men at the front of the race. They, I think, will start to increase their advantage. The last time check we got was 2 minutes and 8 seconds. And if the main field rides along like this, the next time check we get could be closer to the 4-minute mark.
That's absolutely right here, and this is an attack by Telecom. Goodness knows why that rider's attacking when he's got his teammate up the road, but he's trying to get them to react. Now, I would have thought it would have been better to have played into the calmness of the day rather than annoy the bunch here and get them all underway again, but that's what's happened. Now they've sat up once more. Faso-Bortolo, Telecom, Rabobank, Mappe and Gerolsteiner are the teams irritating the peloton just now at the front here.
Looked like that was Udo Boltz who tried to jump off the front of the main field there, and I'm not really surprised why he would do that, because he really is the man who knows all about the tactics of the course, and having his man in the leading group, he knows it should have really been left up to some of the other riders. The three leaders are still containing their advantage, and they must now be thinking, Phil, about how to handle the big climbs, which will certainly start to rear up in front of them very shortly.
This is Walter Benetto. They've been away for quite a long time now. The lead has gone up a little bit. An attack from CSC here now. And a little gap being allowed to open as well. So this is the start of maybe a reaction. Very necessary. This looks like Tyler Hamilton who's gone clear here. Yes, it is.
Tyler Hamilton. Well, that's a surprise.
I didn't recognise his style for a moment, lying like he was across the handlebars. But that is definitely Tyler Hamilton who's gone. And this is Gerolsteiner's Marcel Strauss at a guess. I haven't seen him race too often, Paul, but it looks like him.
Well, that's amazing to see Tyler come out, because we haven't seen too much of Tyler Hamilton so far in the early part of the season. But he obviously wants to come out and try and set this race on fire, maybe to set something up for one of his teammates right now, or maybe just to have them garner a little bit of confidence in the fact that he is on course, ready to try and ride well in the upcoming Giro d'Italia, because that is the next major rendezvous for that man. He will be taking part for CSC at the Giro d'Italia and followed up by the Tour de France. A big contest there between him and Lance Armstrong, his former leader.
Another attack going off. We expected this one because the Crédit Agricole riders are looking for a place in the Tour de France. They're on the move now. Hamilton and Strauss have got together, and now I've got a little tandem going here. Don't forget, we haven't seen much of Tyler at all this year. He hasn't probably raced, I don't know, 10 or 12 races maybe the whole of his season. His ambition, as Paul has said, is later. That's why he's moved across from Lance Armstrong to be the leader of the Dutch CSC Tiscali team for the Giro d'Italia. That's his big aim this year. So now he's got to start searching for the form. That's why he's going for a long attack. But when you see a road so straight, it is not a good moment to go out on the attack.
Well, actually, I'm not surprised you didn't recognize his style there, Phil, because his style and position seemed to have changed just a little bit. He seemed to be sitting very low on the bike compared to his normal riding position, and maybe that is because it's the early part of the season. He's maybe riding with his saddle just a little bit further down, lower than he would normally have it, and he seemed to have pulled himself fairly far forward on that machine. Right now, the two of them have got together. They've got an advantage of not very much more than 10 seconds, and when you do have a name like Tyler Hamilton, I don't think they're going to let him get too far off the front end of the main field.
Well, let's see if they do react. But these three riders just getting on with the job in hand here. Bianchi, very famous making bicycles, of course. It was the one that was loyal throughout to one Fausto Coppi in Italy. He won all of his big races riding the famous Bianchi frames. Now, nice steady tempo. These boys haven't missed a turn at all here, just going through and off, keeping the tempo nicely. Where next big climb of any note is the Côte de Paille, and then once over the top of that we shall race on to just the 4 remaining climbs of this race. But of course the Puy itself is so often the deciding factor. Anybody who gets away still has to contest the finish line in the break, and that is a very steep climb.
Well, I have to say the most experienced man in this leading group is the man we're looking at right now, Jens Heppner, a former East German. Again, you see, Phil, accelerations in the main field. It's Faso Bortolo who are putting all of the force behind the attacks on the front end of the main field. I have to say, I think they have been the most successful team in the early part of the season, with an awful lot of victories. The good thing is their victories have been spread out amongst several riders like Baldato. In fact, Bartoli's also had his own share of wins this season, and Pataki, who's been absolutely magnificent.
Well, this is a fabulous effort now, and a very serious effort indeed here by Hamilton, drawn by the more inexperienced Strauss from Gerolstein, and new colours for that team this year. They've signed, don't forget, David Rebellin, and he's a big shot for them, as that team also tries to make its way in the big time.
There's a rider trying to come across here from Crédit Agricole, and this must probably be Hervé. He's joined there by Johan van der Waal, and that is a good move by these two riders. I think really the small Fleche are being given a chance to try and get off the front of the main field, because certainly quite soon the big boys will be coming out, and that's when the big guns will start to fire. You can see that reaction from the attack from Faso Bortolo has been brought back in. Everybody now starting to get just a little bit more nervous, and the attacks are coming thick and fast.
Just look at the movement in the peloton now. Clearly riders are now sensing a move is about to happen, and they're scurrying around riders who are slowing down, pulling off the front of that peloton. As you can see, we're not that far from the finish now, 38 miles or so to the line, but we've still got to go through over the climb at Huy yet.
They've just brought back those two riders, so Hervé now, Phil, back into the fold. Still leaving two counter-attackers at the moment off the front end of this main group, and then the three leaders are still keeping hold of their advantage for the moment. But I think now a lot of these riders seeing the chance to try and leap off the front end of this main pack. Again, looks like one of the US postal riders. In fact, it looks like Jose Luis Rubiera who's decided to have a go at this race. He too has had a fairly quiet start to the season. I would think Lance Armstrong will be trying to get this man ready for the Tour de France later later in the year. He's got so many words of praise for this man, and that acceleration there has again formed a small group off the front end of the main field. But still the same situation out on the road at Pont de Bon. We still have the same three leaders. Walter Bennett, probably the least experienced of these riders. He's been a professional for 3 years. He's only had one victory to his credit, but he has been a very aggressive bike rider, and we've seen him ride so well at the Tour de France. But the gap now feels starting to come down. Look at that. The second group is 1:28 seconds behind, and the main peloton just 20 seconds further back.
Well, we should be on the climb in just about 3 kilometers now, just under 2 miles. So what is the climb, the next upgrade, if you like. And it looks as though they might not be holding much more than a 1 minute lead by the time they get there, because they're continuing at their level pace. He's word now coming up from Rudy Pevenage, I think it is, in the front seat there today for Telecom. Messages for Jens Heppner, and he will know now there are 2 riders chasing and the peloton, and they're all closing in rather quickly. These long empty roads here in the Ardennes, 6% the gradient, and that's on the upcoming climb of the Côte de Pailly.
Well, Telecom have got 2 serious contenders in the main field who've got a great chance of coming up with the win today. Alexander Vinokourov wears number 1 for Team Telecom, and he has a great chance of winning at the top of the Mur de Huy. But also, let's not forget Andreas Kloden, and on the start line this morning, a new year for Bobby Julich in the pink jersey of Team Telecom, and maybe a little bit more freedom to ride his own race after battling for a little while to try and confirm his 3rd place in the Tour de France.
There's the latest at 59 kilometers, 1:15 now to Tyler Hamilton, and 1:48 to the peloton. So he's slipping away, but it's only half a minute, not very much, least of all on these long straight roads, although he's just gone off on those little bends for the time being. But even so, it's not a good section of the course to try and escape on. Further up the road now, more or less on the climb of the Côte de Pailly. Alex Zülle concentrating very hard, returning back to his greater legs this season. And again, more action from the back here, and it's not going to be easy. This is Gorazd Stangeli. He's actually a Slovenian rider. He's on Fassa Bortolo now. He's a very, very underrated bike rider, this man. He also speaks extremely good English. Just looking to see who's coming with him, and a chance to see all of the new teams on the block here now, because this is Phonak, and they have really strengthened their squad this year and are looking now also to try and get a wild card place in the Tour de France.
Well, the American link with the Phonak team is the fact that Jim Okovic has been signed up as an advisor to the team. The team is basically run on the road by Jacques Michaud, a former stage winner at the Tour de France, but they do take an awful lot of advice from Jim Okovic, who is still very much associated with the sport of international cycling. I tell you one thing though, Phil, these riders now are starting to weaken just a little bit. It's a little strange to see the attacks going off the front all of the time, because generally in the Fleche Wallonne it really is a wearing down process, and the elimination is done at the rear on the next succession of climbs that we're about to hit.
It's interesting when you see the Benesto riders here in the action, because they don't come to this area very often for the Classic. It's the first chance for the far northern European observers to see Benesto in action at this time of the year. Even Miguel Indurain used to come here. This is Leif Hoster on the front at the moment. Is it Leif Hoster, Paul? Yes, it is.
This looks like Fleche as well, the rider from iBenesto.com. Now, he's a great revelation over the last years, a very adventurous bike rider, very prepared to go out and try and get himself into a breakaway situation. He's a man who's won quite a few races and regarded very much now as a new star for the iBenesto team.
Well, watching Telecom boys staying in the action here if they can. Number 213 there is Cyril Dessel, a Frenchman. He rides for Jean de la Tour, again another team that's not yet in the Tour de France and were last year.
Matthias Kessler from Team Telecom was the man getting in there right now. He'll ride a bit of a defensive role right now. He's got his man Jens Heppner in the lead group of 3 riders, but that gap now is starting to come down. You can see it's really starting to pinch on these riders now. When you see the big long line going down the side of the road like that, it is unbelievable. You're just hoping to stay on the wheel of the man in front of you and just begging for the pace to be lifted slightly so that you can recuperate, and that's exactly what's happened now. We've swung across to the right-hand side of the road. That'll be Kessler on the front, looking over his shoulders to have a look and see what sort of damage is done. That's a bad sign right now, because everybody is suffering and they expect to see gaps appearing in the main field, but for the moment everyone is still together.
Well, it's 58 seconds to Hamilton's group now. Here they are. These are catching up now with the top 3. and they're getting the impression they're not very far behind. With the service car there being sent in front of these two, it could mean that the peloton themselves, if we could just peek left, but we can't, are coming in very quickly on these two. They could all be together very shortly, because that breakaway is coming back. The climb of the Côte de Paille, and I've got a feeling that it's all going to come together. The gap now is approximately 55 seconds for these three riders. Doesn't seem actually Heppner doing a lot of work here, Paul, and maybe he's been told to slow it down a bit.
I think that's what Rudy Pevenage came up alongside for before. They realise now that their men in the back, men like Alexander Vinokourov, have got much more of a chance on the explosive finish up here to the line in Huy. So they've told Heppner, we'll shut it off right now. We want it all to come back together because we don't like the situation of the race. And he's probably pretty happy to get an order like that. But as we speak, I would say, in fact, that Tyler Hamilton can't be very much more than 30 seconds behind right now. We're now into the town of Paille, and in fact, just outside of the town here, we will kick upwards, and that's when I think we will see some serious counterattacks coming out of the main field. Walter Benetto very happy there to take up third position for a while and sit on the tail wheel of the men in front of him. Alex Zülle, Phil, looks very concentrated. His pedaling action is exactly the same as the Alex Zülle of old. I think he's now starting to enjoy his bike riding once again.
Well, that would be nice. Anyway, for those of you interested, as we all are now, because women's racing is actually really good currently, and the women's Fleche Wallonne has just finished, and it's been won by Fabiana Luperini. What a great bike rider she is, and she's got victory in the women's classic today. It's not as far as the men's, of course, as we continue now with what looks to me as though, have we picked up Tyler Hamilton?
Well, it looked a bit confusing just there, but that win by Luperini is not a big surprise because she won the race last year as well. But she really does seem to excel in this part of the world. These three riders are still surviving, but a bit of a grimace now creeping onto the face of Alex Zülle in the yellow and black jersey of Team Coast. And the fact that these guys are just getting out of the saddle a little less comfortably than they were before indicates that it really is all starting to come together. Hamilton still surviving 44 seconds off the back, but that group of Hamiltons, Phil, just 15 seconds off the front end of the main field.
Yes, little sign there saying we're heading up the climb now, about a kilometre to the summit, and there's a nice workmanlike group getting away here. Now we seem to have split in behind with the camera. This has only just happened then. Matthias Kessler has got himself onto this group, and that's interesting. At the moment, Gerolstein have got riders up here as well, and just tucked over on the back there some of the other riders on the race here from the Cofidis team, and it's nicely Dmitry Fofanov, another old friend of ours, one of the original Kazakh amateur riders. They've all got professional contracts on the big teams now. They're highly regarded, and that is the latest one is Fofanov. It's the second or third year for him now.
I think it's all going to come together. You see how they're pushing all the neutral service cars forward. That red car there is a car of the race referee. That's an indication that the group is all starting to come together. Well, in fact, I think Alex Zülle's been dropped.
I think he has, because there's still riders up front. Well, that was a surprise. I would have bet my life on him today. He looked so cool a few moments ago, but I think maybe he knows this is not going to work, because this little group is looking very workmanlike now as they're trying to get clear. And there up ahead, we think might be the Hamilton group, and I think they'll be back in the pack straight away. So they're going to be caught just over the top here of this little climb, leaving 4 climbs to come. And I reckon less than a minute now across the whole field here that matters in Fleche Wallonne.
Well, the summit of this climb, I think we'll see a complete rechange in the front end of the main field. There are only 2 riders left at the front now. That really surprises me. You can just see Alex Zülle there off to the right-hand side with his yellow jersey, and I think he may well have made a professional error there to sit up and wait for the main field, because it's so much better to get caught over the summit of the climb. You can see now Heppner still looking very strong. He's riding a good old tempo to keep himself off the front of the main field, knowing that there's a counter-attack coming forward right now. And Walter Benetto, let's just have a look at that once more, Phil, because this is the moment. I saw the big grimace on the face here of Alex Zülle. He had looked so comfortable just a few moments previously, but I think after being at the front for such a long time, he decided the better part of valor was to go back to the main group.
Live to fight another day may not be a bad idea, because I'm not sure these two are going to stay away. I can't quite work out Heppner's tactics, but I don't think he wants this breakaway to succeed, and that might be the reason why he's waiting at the back. But here comes this little group. It's not really away, is it? But it's trying to get away, and plenty of men willing to work here. It's thinned down a little bit, though. 1 or 2 have gone back into the bunch, which isn't in itself very far away. Zülle is somewhere down through the middle of them now. So this is the main group chasing Hamilton, and they'll be all back imminently.
Looks very much like the Mappe rider in this group. In fact, it's Cadell Evans, the mountain biker too. But in fact, although they'd got themselves a gap between this group and the main field once again feels starting to recover, dragging themselves back up to this bike race, keeping everything very much inside of a whole 1 minute.
Into the province of Namur. Beautiful part. The riders still haven't quite got it together to chase them down. They're not working as a unit. The gap there, you can see, we swept everybody up now except the 2 leaders, and it's just 40 seconds. This being on part of the global satellite system, so very accurate timing as we look down on the 2 leaders again. And whenever we come back to them, Heppner is always in second place, and I don't think he's putting much weight into this move at all now. So Walter Bennett is on a hiding to nothing. I feel sorry for him, but that's the way it is right now.
Well, those are team tactics. You know, Heppner has to take part in the much bigger picture, the bigger plan that Team Telecom has, which is why the team management came up alongside and said, now you have to sit on, because they are trying to win this bike race. And I think they're trying to win it today with Alexander Vinokourov, who is in the group behind, and he will be looking to try and get himself a good win for Team Telecom. And that's why there's no cooperation at all at the front here for Jens Heppner, which indicates that fairly shortly that 40-second gap will get absolutely wiped away.
Well, just look at that long straight road, the service car there, the yellow service car. He will be told to move out of the way when that gap closes down to 30 seconds, so at least they've preserved that much so far. But I think in this shot we might well see the peloton come into view out of that woods, and it could well have been just then. Looking down this long road now, and no signs yet of turning off it as we continue now heading down from Havelanga. Slight change of direction there, but we're staying on the main road. These are the 2 leaders, and now we do have Heppner at the front, just keeping the tempo going.
Well, Heppner looking very strong here. You know, he has not put a lot of work into this leading breakaway, but he does look exceptionally strong today, very comfortable, no problem at all. You see he's just sitting on the top of the handlebars there, ticking the pedals over, while on the other hand Walter Bennett looks slightly weaker. He gets out of the saddle much earlier when he's trying to keep that big gear ticking over right now, and immediately look at Heppner here, Phil. He just is so relaxed on his machine. He's just waiting for the race and the big plan of Team Telecom to get launched. They've got some very good riders on the start line this morning, not only Vinokourov but also Bobby Julich, not to forget Andreas Kloden, the former winner of Paris-Nice. He's the kind of man who should excel today, and of course in a couple of days' time when the race goes down to Liège for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. These 2 races really are a very difficult couple of races to digest, and very often the big stars don't like to try too hard in the Fleche Wallonne because they try to conserve as much energy as possible for the big World Cup race at the weekend.
It's always a difficult call because there's also a joint prize for your cumulative positions in the 2 races, and it's quite a nice prize too, champion of the Ardennes weekend. So if you have a good result here, you feel obliged to try and get another one. As we look down on the 2, Walter Bennett, by the way, has ridden the Tour de France twice in his short career, and last year finished very well, I think, in 42nd place.
Well, in fact, Lance Armstrong, when he won this race back in 1996, went on to finish second in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and he took the prize for the Ardennes weekend. But I think rather than winning the Ardennes weekend, he would much certainly have preferred to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but he was outfoxed by a very clever and wily old bike rider by the name of Pascal Richard. Pascal Richard had feigned fatigue over the last 10 or 15 kilometres, but once he had the finishing line in front of him, he showed Armstrong his back wheel.
Yes, indeed. And looking at Jens Heppner, I'll just tell you that he's ridden the Tour de France 9 times, no less. And his best result, funny enough, came in the first time he rode when he finished 10th.
Well, ever since then, Phil, he's had a separate agenda because most of the last few years he's had to spend looking after Jan Ullrich in the big mountain passes. Now, this is back with the main field. And again, Phil, the numbers are swelling in this group from the rear. A lot of riders managing to recover after that last climb of the day. And they're coming forward all of the time here right now. We still have 4 very difficult climbs to go before the finish, and the Côte de Benaïn is really, I think, where the winning move is going to be made today, because I can't remember in recent history ever having seen such a large group together so close to the finish.
Nice little 7% downhill away from Havelanga now. We're just 30 miles from the line, and there's the man in the best seat. I don't know how he ever finds the riders halves of the day when you fly up there in a helicopter, but he finds them. as we watch down now as the Fleche Wallonne courses its way around back towards the finish in Huy. We've seen plenty of the town earlier in the day, but this time it'll be for real when they come back up the climb. This the 66th year of the Fleche, which means arrow in French, so that's why it's called the Wallonne arrow, the Wallonne region of France, where they speak of Belgium rather, where they speak French. The Flemish region, they speak Flemish, and it's so often the case that the Flemish speakers cannot speak French and therefore cannot speak to people who live in their own country. I've always found that so strange, Paul.
It's very strange indeed. There is in fact a linguistic border between the two countries, and very much like crossing a bridge over a river. On one side they will not speak the other language. It has changed a lot over recent years, but certainly it is something that still does continue, and very few of the French-speaking Belgians can actually speak the Flemish language.
It's true. I used to race on a Belgian team with Flemish riders, and whenever we raced in the Ardennes region, they simply were like people in a foreign country. They used to do sign language to ask for things. They couldn't speak French. Anyway, back with a man who speaks it fluently here, Walter Bennett, two-time tour rider, trying to make the most of this breakaway. They've got rid of Alex Zülle by intent or otherwise. He went off on that last climb. And now as we run down towards the last 40 kilometres of racing, last hour in fact, the peloton here are far from out of contention. In fact, they seem to be doing just enough to hold this breakaway under control, but nobody putting in the killer blow to bring them back.
I'm a little bit surprised really to see those two men surviving off the front end of this main field, and it's all really to do with the fact that nobody has actually organised a chase on the front end. This is the winners' palmarès for the last few years for Fleche Wallonne, and the men who've won it the most, Marcel Kint, Eddy Mercs and Marino Argentin, have won this race on 3 separate occasions, and Bernard Hinault and Claude Criquelion won it twice. Even the Frenchman Laurent Lefevre in 95 and 97. It is a race, though, Phil, that really does shine much more towards the climbing style of bike rider.
Absolutely. Well, Rick van Steenbergen wasn't a great climber. He won it twice, but Rick 1, as we always used to call him, because then there was Rick van Looy. Later he became Rick 2. Rick van Looy certainly was a sprinter, but Rick van Steenbergen was a real Iron Man. He took a lot of punishment on a bike, and he was a brilliant bike rider. Rocking of the shoulders here, keeping the tempo nice and high. Walter Bennett, this will do Bonjour no end of good for the upcoming possible wild card into the Tour de France. And Jens Heppner, no such worries, because his team are in naturally, as they will ride yet again.
Well, 5 teams must be selected for the Tour de France. Again, the attack coming. Michele Bartoli, he likes this bike race. He's trying to get himself off the front right now. And these attacks by Bartoli will almost certainly be eating into his energy right now. I've seen him do this so many times before in the Fleche Wallonne. He needs to, I would say, to wait until we get to one of the steep climbs and launch a real good punchy attack. And that way he might be able to get a good gap over the main field.
Well, that's interesting. Seiko have now suddenly taken an interest in this race, and it's certainly livened up in the last kilometre or so. Now, why are we moving up here so far? A breakaway, or are we nearly up with the leaders? And in fact, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 riders have got themselves away. Oh, even more. So there's been a little bit of a split here. Now, as we start to climb again, this might well throw a new development on the event.
Well, number 55 there, Bobby Julich on the back for Team Telecom. Good to see him in his new colours. Michael Bugert is in there as well. That acceleration did come from Michele Bartoli, and he's urgently now trying to move forward and get a lot more riders to come up with him. In there as well, you can see for ibernesto.com, Francisco Mancebo, a very good bike rider last year in the Vuelta a España, and this now is the first serious move of the race.
Well, this is most interesting now. The next sort of climb is the Côte de Coutis, which will come at around 38 kilometres to go. Bartoli and Bogart in a move like this could be a very serious move indeed, as they're now starting to close in rapidly. There's Bobby Julich, looking pretty cool, tagged onto a very good express train. Huge effort here, and brings across the CSC rider Andrea Perrone, grits his teeth. I don't think he's going to get on. I think he's almost on, and his legs have gone, Paul.
Well, that's what happens when you've been in a break earlier on. He absolutely popped. He knew the right move, he was with the right move, but the acceleration of Michele Bartoli on the front, and he just could not stay with it. The Once rider in the group here in the yellow jersey is Jörg Jach. Frank Bouillet is the man there from Bonjour. André Perron's name is still there, but it won't be there for very much longer. Jean de la Latour have got Patrice Algon, and there you can see Michael Bugert accelerating, the Rabobank rider.
Ooh.
A good candidate here for victory, Phil. Now, that is a serious acceleration from the Dutchman.
That's a huge effort there, and Gianni Farazin had a job hanging on, but and there's Bogert saying, well, what happened to everybody? He went just a little bit too hard for the group that time. He needs a few deep breaths now and get down to the back of the race.
Bobby Julie looks very good there. In fact, there's another man moving across here. This is good now. Andreas Kloden, a name we mentioned, also Vinokurov. So that is why Jens Heppner at the front of the bike race, Phil, was not working quite as hard as he should have done, because he feels that the men who got a chance of winning this are in his own team, and their name is not Jens Heppner. It's the three men we mentioned just a little bit early. Michele Bartoli slipping to the back of the group right now to see just exactly what sort of damage has been done.
Well, I think if we could swing around, we'll find that the peloton is not very far away here. I think Bogart has recognised this fact just now, because Danilo De Luca has come across for Seiko. Another strong man who could do a great ride, and we come into Everlet. And yes, as our camera slowly drops back, more and more riders are coming across the gap. So I think the bunch is regrouping here.
The Crédit Agricole rider there, the first time I've seen him this year riding in Crédit Agricole colours, Christophe Moreau, a serious challenger for the Tour de France later in the year. We're now rejoining the two leaders. They're still riding superbly well together, Phil. Walter Benetton at the front for Bonjour doing the majority of the work, while Jens Heppner, you can see him looking over his shoulders here right now. He's waiting for the return of the main field, and he will be happy to know that his teammates Julik, Vinokurov and Andreas Kloden are being very attentive.
There's the latest gap, nothing in it. 10 seconds now. We can see the whole field at just 30 miles from the finish. 48 kilometres. Another attack coming from Rabobank. Well, this is typically a move by Dutchmen here who want to liven the race up again. Could well be Mark Lotz having a little dig here.
Well, Rabobank are a very aggressive team. Kelme as well. Really the first time we've seen them during the Classics. They did take part in Paris-Roubaix, but we didn't see very much of them. But they are the kind of team who look to be aggressive on all occasions when they can. That is a good split that's forming behind right now, Phil. Looking back down that group, I would say there are probably only about 40 riders. But looking further back, you can see the team cars, so the main field not too far behind.
No, very attentive. Everybody launching the attack, but everybody being marked. It's really a hard race to hold your position in just at the moment, because you don't know where the next attack is coming from. There are a lot of teams interested now in splitting this race up, and we must be almost on the back wheel of Heppner.
Well, again, another rider from ibernesto.com launching off the front, trying to get across the gap. I don't think he's too worried about catching the two leaders. What he's more interested in right now is getting off the front end of this group. We are now coming to the very critical part of this race, the Fleche Wallonne, Phil, where we will get a repetition of some very difficult climbs. The race almost certainly will form in the next 20 kilometres or so, and I would expect to see a lot of riders being left behind, but still, I have to say I'm still fairly amazed at the large number of bike riders still left in contention.
So am I, especially the way that they've been going these last few kilometres, attack after an attack. Now we're almost hooking up here with the two leaders. We swung off the main road, heading now towards the Côte de Coutis, and I think, you know, they're only just in front. I don't really know how they're holding off the group anymore.
Well, I think it's thanks to Walter Benetton, who's really been the man setting the tempo on the front.
There they are.
Here they are. It's all over for the two leaders. The main field, which has actually regrouped slightly behind, is right on their tail right now, and Walter Benetton knows that it's all over. And the ibernesto.com rider, I didn't catch who he was exactly, came across pretty rapidly, but that really is an escape which is going to come to nothing, because the main field is right there.
That lovely swoop behind of the team cars down that dip into the Vale. We're all together again now, and it hasn't been that way for a few hours, and it doesn't look like it's going to stay that way very long, because again counter-attacks are beginning.
Well, everybody wants to move here. There's a rider from Lotto trying to get off the front here right now. They were the winners of this bike race last year, and on that occasion it was Rick Verbrugge who came out and got himself the victory, a victory that he really dearly wanted to get. A Belgian winning in the Fleche Wallonne is something that doesn't happen very often. I think the last man to win this race before him was in fact Claude Criquelion.
Well, this is the Lotto rider who's now looking for the next move. And if you may remember, Paul, I think that was also when Moreno Argentin and Stephen Roach were involved in the... Remember that race when Stephen and Claude Criquelion were clear, and then Moreno Argentin came from nowhere and snatched the day?
Well, the Crick was a great bike rider in his day. He was world champion on one occasion. He thinks he should have been world champion on 2 occasions, but he had that little altercation with either the policeman or Steve Bauer on the run into the finish. And that finish and the replay of that finish, Phil, was debated forever and ever, not only by cycling fans, but also by a couple of juries around the world. And eventually Steve Bauer was completely exonerated. I personally knew both riders, and I have to say I think Criquillon was in the wrong, because although he was a great bike rider, he was not a very good sprinter. And I think he made the mistake of trying to go up through the inside, and the road actually naturally just got a little bit narrower. But they weren't very good friends after that.
No, and they're quite right. That's mildly put, I think, Paul, because I was actually there right on the finishing line, and it was the same sprint in which Maurizio Fondriest was involved. And Fondriest, of course, won, and he would have finished third, no doubt. He was on his last legs. And I remember an Italian lady saying, who won, who won? I said, for Fondriest, and she went absolutely berserk. It was obviously the result she wanted. Now then, who's attacking now? Is this a Jean de la Tour rider, is it?
It's like Jean de la Tour coming off the front.
They've changed the colours a bit this year.
Yeah, they've slightly darkened the jerseys. This looks as if it could be Patrice Algon going away again, unless it's Laurent Lefevre, who's been fairly active since the start of the season. This team, again, another team who are looking for selection in the upcoming Tour de France right now, and he's got the gap over the main field.
Well, he's gone for a long one here. I'll go with your second choice there as we come inside, well inside 50 kilometres to go. It is Laurent Lefevre who's now in. Only ever had 2 wins in his career, this man. He won a stage of the Tour of Chile, which was in way back now, 1997. He's never won a race since 97, in fact.
That's when he was riding for Festina at the time. He's got a slight gap there, but you can see Faso Bortolo in the white jersey is now starting to become very attentive. And in fact, that looks like the world champions jersey there of Oscar Freire moving to the front on the right-hand side. The white one with the arc-en-ciel bands right across it.
The rainbow bands for the world champion. And the jersey, of course, everybody likes to win if they can. AO is where we are now. And again, a little bit of a chase beginning here. Looks like it could be Cofidis and Telecom trying to get something moving, as Laurent Lefevre may well be first onto the slopes of the Coutis.
Well, they've slipped the main field right now. They have got a slight advantage. This is the more tactical part of the course now. The next climb will be the Côte de Coutis, followed by the Côte de Boiseau, and then the Benaïn right at the very end there, and they drop down, and from the Benaïn to the finish is not very much more than 12 kilometers. A fast drop off that climb along the valley, and then it kicks right up the last 1.5 kilometers to the finishing line in Huy. And what a finishing line it is. I tell you, if you ever try to walk up it, it's difficult, let alone go up it on a bike.
Yeah, absolutely right it is. These 3 riders trying to get themselves together onto the climb itself now. There's the details for you. And a reasonably long climb for this region. And we're strengthening our attackers here, maybe with the whole peloton, if we could see to the right, as they form again around each other at the front. A lot of people paying attention here. They've got the feeling that any little lump in the road could decide the race today. It's only 198 kilometres to these boys. A little hors d'oeuvre before Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Another attacker's gone now, trying to catch up with our motorbike. We better put the throttle down.
Looks like Bietzberg coming off the front here. Both he and his brother riding for Rabobank today, but this is a good move by Bietzberg. The Swiss rider on the squad, very aggressive right now. Moving onto his wheel is one of the riders from Taconi Sport. But they haven't really got the gap over the main field right now. They've taken some risks coming through that chicane, very rapidly sliding through there, but the main field really still staying in contention for the moment. I do think, though, Phil, we have to have an explosion on the next climb, because still there are an awful lot of bike riders. Here's Oscar Freire coming forward right now, the world champion from Mapei. And still, I'd almost forgotten about our lone leader, Laurent Lefevre. He's still off the front, not very far off the front right now, but still this is a good chance to open up an advantage, because in the main field it seems as if everybody is a little bit wary about launching the attack too far from the finish.
Well, you see, the reason these French teams are attacking is because they haven't got a ride in the Tour de France, and they're trying to attract the attention of the Société de Tour de France to get a wild card place. And there's plenty of riders willing to attack. This is the attack of Lefevre just as they started the climb of the Côte de Coutis, and now he's got a gap of around about 20-25 seconds, I think. Yes, that'll be about right, as we look over to the far end here, and the peloton still trying to sort themselves out. Nice to see Oscar Freire getting into the action at the front, because he's always dogged with injury, this rider. had a reasonable start to the season, a couple of wins so far in February, and a good ride, of course, in Milan-San Remo, where he finished 5th.
It's hard to know a bike rider who's got such class, who's had so many problems with injuries over the years. When he was world champion last time, he hardly raced at all wearing that jersey, Phil, because of the problems that he had with his back. He seems to have a kind of sciatic nerve problem, which even the best doctors in the world don't seem to be able to cure. I think they've got it right now, because he really has started this season off well, and let's hope he doesn't have too many problems later on, as he did previously when he was world champion.
It looks like the chase group trying to get themselves organised, but still Lefevre giving his best shots. Big gamble this, because there's still the rest of the hills to come and the brute of a climb up to the finish down in Huy.
Well, it's a good move for a man like Laurent Lefevre, because this is now coming to the tactical part of the course, and I think rather than riding himself alone to the finish, what he's waiting for is a group to form off the front end of the main field, a little bit like this one. But you look how the riders keep looking over their shoulders. They're wanting to attack, they're wanting to get into a group, but they want to conserve a little bit of energy, which is why they keep looking over their shoulders, and that is not the way to get off the front end of a main field. You have to open the gap, put your head down and not look back, and hope that the gap appears rapidly.
Just no organisation at all. Everybody's for himself here, just doing as fast as he can, then looking for somebody else to give him a hand. The result is they're split up all over on this descent, and just no organisation. They want a combined effort here, I think, to get these riders organised into a nice working unit to pull away from the field. Easier said than done, of course, as we follow on these narrow roads, but these roads now are absolutely perfect for an attack to go, and I think one or two have realised it.
Well, these are great roads for attacking. These are the roads where if you can get yourself 150 or 200 meters advantage over the main group, you're out of sight. And one thing they always say in the sport of cycling is out of sight and out of mind. If there is no longer a carrot in front of the donkey, which is the main field, very often it shuts off. This man, though, is leading the bike race right now. He too, Phil, he keeps looking over his shoulder. He is waiting for some help to come up from behind. They've darkened their jerseys just a little bit during the winter months, negotiating this corner quite nicely. Thank you very much. Very shortly, he will be on the slopes of the next climb of the day, the Côte de Coutis. It's a 7.3% average grade. It doesn't go very much at all. It goes up 63 meters, but it's 9% at the steepest part.
Yes, we're only climbing to a height of 200 meters. This is Paolo Bettini suddenly shot away here. So he's launched a terrific attack on the slopes. As soon as they hit the slopes here, Bettini has gone, and that's caused a lot of consternation here now.
Well, that looked like Marcus Seberg who was in that group right now. This is Stangelai as well. He's having a great ride today. Moving forward again. This is in fact Hepner. Hepner, who was in the breakaway a little bit earlier on, obviously conserved some energy and still able to do the teamwork.
Well, the long white sleeves there, I'm pretty sure that is Gorash Stangley. We saw him attack earlier. He's got in this little moving group here. So there may be some help on the way here, because Laurent Lefevre is labouring a little bit, but he's gone over the top of that climb now, and a left turn keeps them on course. So that's he's got over the top of the Côte de Coutis quite well, and this is the group that's trying to come up, and this is in fact Stangley here, number 37.
Sylvain Chavanel there for Bonjour, wearing number 144. He's having a bit of difficulty right now. You saw him nodding his head just a bit there, and he didn't quite have the power, but you have to be a very powerful man to follow this man, number 12, Paolo Bettini. He's nodding away, and there in fact is Laurent Lefevre just in front of him.
And Alessandro Specialetti is the Italian rider for Seiko coming across the gap, and a very interesting little group forming now. Kelme, it looks as though it might be Gutierrez, little sprinter, done well to hang on to the tail. It's a nice group this, and if it gets up to the leader, who knows, they might start to develop. So in fact it's not Gutierrez, it's David Munoz.
Munoz, a very good all-arounder, a man capable of getting himself into small moves like this. Laurent Lefevre, I think, will be happy with this situation right now. Phil, we have a five-man group coming across, and this is a much more given a chance towards success, because these riders will now start to work together. They've really looked over their shoulders a lot over the last few meters to try and get themselves an advantage, and it is in fact Marcus Seberg who's got himself into the group, the brother of Beat, who was attacking very aggressively just a few moments earlier. But again, Phil, they've gone through the summit of the climb and they're spreading out across the road, and the reason is because riders are starting to come back. There's the world champion coming back again. Great to see him riding well in a race like this. This man is normally regarded as a sprinter, and you would expect him to be having a hard time today, but here he is at the front of the bike race.
And the other telecom rider that came up there was Alexander Vinokurov, and just looking over his shoulder, I've got a feeling this is not going to work either, you know, because that peloton is racing as hard as it can. It's not allowing anybody to slip away at the moment. Now it looks like the two white jerseys there, I guess the long white sleeves at the front is Stangley, and I think the world champion is hooked up, Oscar Freire. That's an interesting little move.
Well, that would be an interesting move, because I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected Freire to wait for a small group to get off the front. It is almost certainly Stangley in second position right there. I'm not sure if it is Freire or not. I can't see the band across his jersey right now. It'd be nice to get down there and have a check on who the two attackers are right now. But they are the men who've decided to go out there and surprise the main field, which were just starting to come back. It is Oscar Freire. Amazing to see a sprinter out on the attack.
And coming off the little back road down this sweeping right-hander, so the leader has got his wish now. It looks like we've got three riders at the front, and he's been honoured with the presence of the world champion, Oscar Freire. We don't ever think of him as a climber or even a strong man. He usually wins races in the sprint, but he is a very good strong rider. And this is a good breakaway, because Stangley is a good man to have along for the ride.
Well, you know, Oscar Freire has been a bike rider for quite some time, and his two world championships have got to be his best acclaim. When he won the world championships for the first time, Phil, he'd actually only ridden 14 races that year. Absolutely unbelievable. And when you bear in mind the amount of accidents and injury this man has had, he always seems to pop back and come up with some great wins. It is such a pity that the man is dogged by injury, because if he wasn't, he would be a magnificent bike rider. Mind you, I wouldn't mind having a career in 2 world championships.
Absolutely right, Paul, and he's always in the first 3 whenever he rides the world championships too. He's got medals for the others he's ridden. But this man now doing justice to his rainbow jersey, and that's what the riders like to do, because so often in the world championship year they don't ride as well, and every time they move, of course, they are marked. But at the moment, this has been such a hard race just now that they've got off the front purely on effort, and they've opened up a little did I speak? Well, look at that, they're all back on. I can't believe it.
This is very strange. We've seen good groups getting off the front, good combinations working well together, and the main field just keeps coming back and back. It is a very strange Fleche Wallonne this afternoon. I really cannot understand why nobody is able to get off the front. Maybe when we get to the next climb we will see a little explosion, because everybody must be right on the limit of cracking all of the time. The big team, I think, who are very attentive at the moment, though, are Team Telecom. They seem to have the right combination of riders in this group, and they seem to be the team who have a good chance of taking out the win today.
Well, there we are, all back together. A Seiko rider launching an attack now. Well, the only one that was up here I saw earlier was Specialetti. And so I wonder if he's now decided to try his luck. But nobody's going with him if that's the case, as he moves clear. Let's have a look at his number. And yes, it is indeed Specialetti, Alessandro Specialetti, the Italian rider for Seiko. He's been very active today. He was up there in that move, and now he's gone away again. And they're all rethinking their situation, so they're going to at least allow him a little bit of a lead. Now they've got to bring him back. Remember, we've still got a couple of hills left to go, and we're in the area now, just on 20 miles from the finish. A good time, perhaps, after a series of attacks, to make a move, because nobody's too willing to start doing it all over again.
But again, he doesn't have super confidence in his move. He keeps looking back, seems to be waiting to see if there is going to be a counter-attack coming after him right now. He's on a slight decline for the moment, picking up speed back with the main field at the moment, which has swelled to absolutely huge numbers. I reckon there are still about 80 riders in that group, Phil.
It's an awful lot, but that's the trend in these classics this year. You know, we don't get the small groups. There's more action here. This is Once rider, it's Jörg Jatsk. Well, he's come right across here. Now, Jatsk, if you remember, was in that breakaway which dominated this race last year. He finally finished in 3rd place. It was a great result for him, and in fact the best result he's ever had in a bike race. And now he's gone across to the group again. It's funny, isn't it, Paul, when you come back to races you do well in, there's that extra inspiration, and all of a sudden you're back in front of the TV cameras.
Well, it's all a question of morale. There are certain races when you know you ride well, and once you've done it several times, you want to come back. And once you start the day, you know you've got a good chance of performing well, and I think that's what's happening to Jörg Jax today. He's a rider who's full of qualities, but spends the majority of his career working for other riders in the Once squad. Right now, though, I think he will be given his chance at the back end of the main field, which is a huge main field still, and we really are very rarely seeing such huge groups coming down to the end of a race like the Fleche Wallonne. I'm totally surprised.
Sat at the back here, Damiano Cunego, the Italian, in the red Seiko jersey. US Postal here have got themselves a rider who is looking a little bit shaky. I think it's Floyd Landis, is it? No, it's not. No, it's not. It's David Zabriskie sitting at the back, but still in the peloton. That's all that matters right now. We continue on. Bit of a cue here for the right-hand turn.
It's going to be very difficult when we come up to the next climb of the day, because I have a feeling most of these guys, there's a bit of a problem at the back here for Crédit Agricole. And the rider from Crédit Agricole who was just slipping back there was Frédéric Bessy. He may well have had an incident, or he may well have just been calling the team car forward to get some drinks and food on board for one of his teammates, and probably that would be for Christophe Moreau, the new leader of that squad. Very shortly we come out of this town, we'll take a turn, and we will be on the third from the finish climb.
Well, this is rather a nice journey through the town here before we get back out onto the main road, which will take us out onto the banks of the River Meuse. And about 13 seconds, maybe 12 or 13 seconds. It's nothing far from decisive, of course, because when a line is as straight as that, they're not going to go very far. Here is Spesaletti in that breakaway with Jörg Jax concentrating. They've been given the head just a little bit. I don't know if you caught sight there of that signpost. It says Liège 43 kilometres. That's 26.5 miles. Wrong way today, boys, but this being a Wednesday, that's the way you'll probably go next Sunday.
These two riders now working very well together. I think they've decided they have got a chance to open up an advantage before the next climb, but the main field is absolutely in anger today. Rarely have I seen such a large group, and they are still hammering along.
They're just not breaking up, and look at this, they're really racing quickly.
Absolutely unbelievable. You see that big long line there, that indicates the hammer is right down. They have an advantage, the two leaders, Phil, of just 13 seconds, and we are now 32 kilometres to go. I think you'd have to look back through your record books an awful long way to see such a large group together so close to the finish of a race like the Fleche Wallonne.
Well, the next little obstacle, the Côte de Boisseau, and that's not very far away now. It's just a couple of kilometres at the most. And these boys are not too far away from the lower slopes of it, in fact, and they are still in the lead, but not by very far. It looks as though Spesaletti is starting to feel the pace a little bit too. Jörg Jax is turning the screw. We're actually on the climb now. And 20%, that is 1 in 5 in old money, and that is a pretty steep little leg breaker.
It's also a fairly long climb as well. I've seen many attacks in the past. Attacks from men like Laurent Jalabert have come on this climb. The climb is 3.4 kilometres in length. That's around about 2 miles. It is, in its steepest part, 20%. Its average is not so much, but it's an ideal launch pad. There's Tyler Hamilton moving up on the right-hand side. Good to see him so competitive early on in the season. Now, these two men can only hope to survive on this very steep 20% portion here, Phil, and get picked up by a group of attackers coming off the front.
Well, the Gerolsteiner rider is Daniele Contrini on the left of our picture, but he's slipped away from the front at the moment. Now, all deciding, are they going to launch an attack, or are they just going to ride up here and see what happens a little later on? They're not edging closer to them as we speak.
Alexander Vinokourov, the telecom rider, right in the middle there. Alongside him, the man probably with the most intelligence in the main field, Udo Boltz. That man is a brilliant tactician. He's really steered Jan Ullrich over the last few years to his Tour de France victories and his second places behind Lance Armstrong. I've always been amazed at Udo Boltz because he started off his career not as a great rider, but he really seems to have got the maximum out of his body, and it's amazing how much he suffers when it comes to the big mountain. There's a move by Hamilton. This is good to see.
So Tyler Hamilton has launched an attack. He's been very aggressive today, and he really said at the start he would just see how it goes because he has not done a lot of racing yet this year. Well, clearly his enthusiasm is carrying him today. He's loving every minute of it.
but he does still look rather strange on that machine. I'm not sure if it's the new jersey that I can't get used to, or if he has actually changed his position during the winter months. You see, each team manager has his own idea on how a position should be, and maybe Bjarne Riis has actually worked with Tyler Hamilton over the winter months to try and find a slightly different position for his man. He's opened up a good gap, and I'm surprised to see that there's no strong reaction coming from the big teams like Telecom after a man by the name of Tyler Hamilton.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't mark him. They seem to have been content to just let him ride away at the moment, so he's been given his chance here because he's only got to get across to this group, which is some 13-14 seconds in front, as the race continues to be tempo set here with Contrini for Gerolsteiner.
Second place, Udo Bolts there, looking very attentive right now. Udo Bolts, I think, will be looking to set up something for his men. There's Vinokurov in about 7th or 8th position in the pink jersey. Still a very large group, but I think we have now started to lose 1 or 2 riders off the tail end of this field. This is a very difficult climb. In the past, I've seen some brilliant attacks on this slope. Nobody really trying to split the main field up right now.
Talking of Udo Bolts, by the way, Paul, he took part in an Ironman triathlon in South Africa. I think it was last year in February. He is an amazing character, and of course he did extremely well in the bike leg. He wasn't too good on the swim section and the run section, but what a great man to do that and still riding races like this as well.
Didn't he take part in the Hawaiian Ironman as well?
I'm not sure. You might be right, actually. I think you are.
I think he was given a special slot in there.
That's right.
And in fact,
that's right.
He was a little bit upset because he felt he didn't have enough time to train and get himself ready for it, but he still managed to finish about 60th, which is absolutely unbelievable when you think in the month of July he was defending Jan Ullrich in the Tour de France. A brilliant bike rider, very capable of trying almost anything, and to think of any other bike rider who would try and take part in an Ironman at the end of a very long season, I don't think I'd find too many candidates.
Stands no comparison with what would happen in other sports. Just amazing characters sometime. Well, we're coursing through these spring days, which is a bit late in coming into the Ardennes. We're still waiting for some warm, sunny days when the birds start singing and the leaves start popping. It hasn't really happened. As we catch up with the 2 leaders now, judging by the way the chief commissaire on the motorbike is moving everybody away, I think the others must be coming up behind them. And maybe Yaxter thinks so too. He's had a look over his shoulder there. Specialetti is there now. Tyler Hamilton, not sure where he is at the moment now. We'll have to wait and see if he's gone back in the group or whether he's just in front.
Well, Faso Bortolo in control of the action at the front end of that main field. The group once again, Phil, stretching out in a very long line, but not popping, not exploding. It really is remarkable how everybody today is seeming to stay in contact.
Now, that could well be Ivan Basso there, the Faso Bortolo rider. Very good, solid rider. Had a good start to the year, second in the Tour of Valencia. And but I can't get over the fact that this bunch just is hanging on. They've all hooked up to the back wheel of the chap in front, and they're not being dropped. And this looks like Basso's having a bit of a dig now. He eased up, sat up, looked at them, and then tried another acceleration, and he's been given a gap.
I think he's trying to set something up for Michele Bartoli, the #1 man in Faso Bortolo. Bartoli's attacked several times so far today. He's never really got very much more than 10 bike lengths off the front, although he did on several occasions fracture a small group off the front end of the main field. Now is the time to attack if you really have got something going in those legs, because I think and must be certain that everybody in this main field is really in the red zone. They're on the point of fracture all of the time. You see the gaps there. The acceleration is absolutely phenomenal, and there are gaps of almost 1 bike length in between each bike rider. There are the 2 leaders, and they're about to get caught.
Yeah, and Basso is the man coming up. Remember that Basso was second last year. He beat Yax by 1 place.
This is Bartoli.
This is what you said, and that was the setup. Basso setting it up for Bartoli. Bartoli now trying to finish it off here as the USA flag flies. It looks as though Michele Bartoli now is trying to break the elastic, and he's going to have to go alone to the finish if he can do it.
Well, I think he might, because you know what? They've sat up just behind. That was a good, hard move, perfectly set up by the team. But you know what? He's only got about 20 meters. All he needs now is for that group behind to shut down for maybe just 500 meters or so, and he'll be able to get the gap. But it looks to me as if they're right behind him. Michael Bugert is here right now for Rabobank.
Well, they swept up Bartoli. Look at him, left him looking over his shoulder there, and now Michael has started to try himself.
Well, I don't think Michele Bartoli could believe that at all. He looked over his shoulder and saw almost the whole field coming forward. This man, a former champion of Holland right now, he's having a go. This man has been such an aggressive bike rider over the few years, and he really doesn't have, I don't feel, Phil, the pedigree to reflect the aggressive riding that he's put in.
Now, it always strikes me as a man who doesn't have extreme talent as a bike rider, but he does get results, and he certainly works hard, Bogart. And they've given him a little bit of a gap now because they were caught breathless at that attack by Bartoli, and they're just recovering a little bit here before they press on, and this might help Michael Bogart as he keeps going. These boys are looking for more help at the front of the peloton.
This is Domo Farm Freaks coming forward right now, and it's a bit tough, you know. This is Bettini taking up the chase at the front end of the main field for Mapei. It is a bit tough, I feel, for Michele Bartoli because he was a brilliant bike rider, Phil. I think capable of winning the Tour de France until the moment when he shattered his kneecap in a dramatic crash in the Tour of Germany a couple of years ago. And he's really, ever since then, sort of tried to fight his way back to the top of the sport. It would be great to see him come up with another magic win.
Yes, it would, and that was a disastrous Tour of Germany for a lot of riders. It was held in bad weather that year and crashes all over the place. Anyway, there's Michael Bogart now, setting the tempo, the captain of the Rabobank team. There'll be lots of cheers from nearby Holland as Bogart gets clear, looking over his shoulder to see if anybody is going to come and join him or whether it's going to be all of them yet again as he mixes it with the best. Remember, we're running out of time now. We're inside the last 40 kilometers of this race, or less than that. Probably now about 19 miles, I would think, from the finish just about now.
That's a beautiful machine he's riding there, a Colnago bike, resplendent in the colours of Rabobank. That's a bit like the one you've got, isn't it, Phil?
Oh, it's a beautiful bike, that. They're all nice bikes, though, these days, and I've got some nice ones, I confess. I'm a little bit of a saving nut when it comes to nice bikes. I wish I had them when I was a racing cyclist, Paul.
Yeah, well, it's much better to look at them now, I think, and keep them nice and polished and keep them in the front room. But Rabobank out on the attack right now, and this could be the moment for Michael Bogart to get his real super big win, the one he's been chasing for an awful long time. He regarded himself as a big challenger for the Tour de France over the last few years, but he's always seemed to have bad luck when he's come up to the big occasions. A great move by him. But again, Phil, he's looking over his shoulder all of the time, trying to see who's reacting, as if he doesn't have the confidence, and he's seen now that there is a chase coming up, and he's sat up.
He's taking a drink. That was a nice shot, actually, most unusual shot with our camera bike alongside, and panning back to the two riders here who've come up, and here they are. And that looks as though is that Dario Frigo? Yes, this is Frigo on the left who's come through now. Dario Frigo, and the other rider, number 23, is Peter Falazine. This is a most interesting move.
That's a good move for Dario Frigo. Had a great finish to Paris-Nice, taking out that climb to the top of the Col d'Huez. I nearly said the Alpe d'Huez, but it was the Col d'Huez. He's a bit of a return rider. Let's not forget he was suspended for many months for being caught with illegal substances in his hotel room during that infamous Giro d'Italia raid last year. And now he's trying to prove that he can come back and perform as a clean rider. Once again, a great attack. Bogart looking over his shoulder, and I don't think he can believe what he's seeing right now. Almost the whole of the main field are clawing their way back.
Back in the action as we get down to the last 28 kilometers of the race, and nobody having the legs to break this field up. It all's well for a classic Liège-Bastogne-Liège on Sunday. One rider trying again to go away once they've clawed back, and it looks as though we might get a group of three, and this looks like Dave Brylance here from Domo, who's got clear. An underestimated rider is Brylance, and also a pretty strong man on the climbs if he can get clear.
Good move by him. He'll have the support of some very strong men in the group behind. The man who leads Domo today is Axel Mercs, the son of the great man himself, Eddy Mercs. Another move coming across here. In fact, we're starting to see a small group of three riders forming off the front, but the main field still have not given up. They're still there. They're still holding themselves together. And you know what? I would be amazed to see, but I think this may well happen. We could have a huge bunch of riders at the bottom of the Mur de Huy together. Now that would be a bunch sprint.
Yeah, it wouldn't be at the top though, that's for sure. It looks like Eddie Mazzolini's come across here. And Frigo, is it? No. Is that Frigo on the left? No, it's Eddie Mazzolini. So 25 kilometers to go at the moment. And again, these boys just trying to hold off the main field, and Eddie Mazzolini in second place.
Bennett was the man up there for Rabobank, but again, still an awful lot of riders in contention here. Everybody seems to be holding on just that little bit more this afternoon, looking for a chance to get themselves a victory in the Fleche Wallonne, which used to be rated as a classic. In modern cycling, it has been, I feel, a little bit demoted because we've created the World Cup. Liège-Bastogne-Liège is the race that has the World Cup title, but Fleche Wallonne, I think, in all rights and in the minds of most professional cyclists, is still regarded as a classic, especially if you win it.
Well, our motorbike giving you a trip through the peloton here. Very tenacious peloton today. They're just grabbing a little bit of snacking before they continue, but they've been under pressure now for a couple of hours.
Number 28 at the back, a former teammate of Lance Armstrong. Very vocal during the winter months in his criticism of Armstrong, Cedric Vasseur. It'll be interesting to see how their first meeting goes when they ride the same races later on in the season.
Yeah, let's hope they stay apart in the peloton. Just seen Serge Baguet go through too from Lotto. He started to show a little bit of form now as well. As we see now the peloton taking a breather. I'm not too sure what's happening at the front now. Our motorbikes got stuck behind the main peloton. But looking over the heads of the riders, I think we are more or less all together again. It's time out. And this peloton, believe it or not, has swept everybody up once more.
Amazing. You could just see the yellow car of Mavic there moving into the side of the road. That was so it could come in behind this small group which is starting to form. I would say there are around about 45 riders left in the front end of this action here at the Fleche Wallonne. And again, a small attack going off the front. Mazzolini once again trying to get the gap.
Brylance, is it?
Brylance once again, two riders forcing themselves clear. Brylance obviously trying to set something up for one of his teammates or get the surprise of getting a bicycle win himself.
Well, what a good bike race at the front it is to watch, but it is taking an awful lot to work out because the riders are putting their efforts in and finding they're just being wound back in. Now, this is a two-up tandem here, a Belgian and an Italian. There's the names for you, Brylance and Mazzolini. Narrow roads, not good surface, a chance here possibly to slip away.
In fact, if you look at the pedigree of this race over the last few years, it's shone much more on the Italian side than on the Belgian side. Apart from Rick Verbrugge, I think in the last 20 years, the only other Belgian to win was Claude Criquelion. So they have 3 wins in the last 20 years to, I really don't know how many Italian wins, but it must be pretty close to 10 or 12.
Yeah, that's true. The Italians have done well here. But, you know, Mazzolini there, he's gone through finally. I thought, in fact, he wasn't working at all because his man back in the bunch is Dario Frigo. And I thought perhaps he was trying to be a spoiling tactic there, but it looks as though he might be working. There's the group, and I think it's pretty much what's left of the whole peloton as we speed forth. And these are the other two. Again, Mazzolini isn't putting his weight in this break. He's always looking behind. Look, he doesn't want this breakaway to work. He's just tapping through, as they say, and not making any serious effort. It's taking so long to get past Dave Brylance, and that is why here come the cavalry yet again.
Well, Rabobank have got a couple of good riders in here. Beat Zeberg is in the group, as well as the man who is their leader, Michael Bogard. Once again, the whole of the race coming back together as we get closer and closer. Now another move coming off the front. This is again Domo Farm Frites.
Well, we'll see who this is as soon as we get down there. It looks like a Fassa Bortolo rider is also hooked up to this Domo rider as they're trying to get clear.
It's very strange, Phil.
It is unbelievable. There's one attack after another, always different riders, but they chase them down. There's nobody getting away.
And it's always very strange where they are actually attacking. It's not actually on the climbs. It's usually over the summit or on the flat sections. While you can see now the main field spreading out over the road, the chase is certainly not on. That group may well now open up a slight advantage over the rest.
A little bit of a change of direction now in the heart of this beautiful countryside here. It's a weak sun, but at least it's come through, and it's chilly, but it's not ice cold. And there's another breakaway on here. And now this looks like Konechny is up here, and Ivan Basso has got away again. So he was the Fassa rider. The Domo rider was Konechny, I think, and we just need to identify the rider on the left of our picture here.
This is one of the riders from iBernesto.com who's managed to slip into that group, and it looks like the Russian rider Denny Menchov who's got in there. That makes 3 riders at the front. But once again, there is the main field. This is unbelievable. And I would imagine a situation, Phil, that we're going to have 30 or 40 riders together today at the bottom of the Fleche Wallonne.
Well, they've got 2 climbs ahead of them right now. And one climb, of course, is the finishing climb itself. So they've got to increase their lead over the next little hill. But again, there's a long line down there and plenty of riders on plenty of teams willing to keep this tempo high. It's not the mood for a breakaway to go yet.
I thought I caught a quick glimpse of Francesco Casagrande in that group as well, sitting very much to the back today, leaving most of the attacking to his teammates, men like Michele Bartoli and Ivan Basso. But I think he's probably, Phil, thinking more about the victory at the weekend in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, that's always a preoccupation of professionals because it's a World Cup counter coming up, and this is the
and they've ridden off the front. Now somebody has to organize themselves on the front end of this main field. This looks like Vasseur going through the camera right now. Sorensen there for CSC. And these riders have almost got themselves into a breakaway by default.
Right, there's the challenge. 1 in 10 or 10% just takes us up to around about 400 feet above sea level. A chance to launch an attack, and that's the most important part of the race today. Unai Echeverria is the rider in orange, and he is a boy most likely to. Massimo Donati is the Tacconi Sport rider tagged onto the back. But I think the Euskaltel rider there, Echeverria, he's Unai Echeverria. He's a Venezuelan, by the way, not to be confused with his team leader, David Echeverria, who is in fact a Spanish rider. Both surnames spelled exactly the same way.
So from that we can deduce that his family probably left the Basque Country many years ago to settle in South America.
Must be the case, Paul. Absolutely right. I hadn't thought of it like that.
Well, this is the group forming at the front end of the bike race. Now, they just trickled off the front a few moments ago. Interesting to see that in here is Vladimir Gustov, the Ukrainian rider on Faso Bortolo.
There's a lot of riders now who are here to help other team leaders win are now in with a chance to win for themselves. One of those rare occasions. There's Massimo Codol, who's also on good form this year.
He's a tough bike rider too. You don't want to let him get too far off the front. There is Cedric Vasseur wearing 28. First time I've seen him in the Cofidis colours this season. And this is the chase behind. Again, it looks like Echeverria trying to come across. Funny thing is the nickname for the Echeverria brothers that the English-speaking riders have is Extra Barrier, especially after Echeverria crashed into a barrier in the Tour de France a couple of years ago.
That was David Echeverria, that's exactly right. We call him David Extra Barrier. And now then, the group still not organised here. Rabobank are on the front. 4 riders trying to steal a march here on what is the last climb before the finish. Number 35 is Volodymyr Gustov, Ukrainian rider on the Fassa Bortolo team. Codol is the Lamprey rider. Nicky Sorensen is CSC and setting the pace at the front as we speak. And the other rider, Cedric Vasseur.
Back end of the main group. 1 or 2 riders in a little bit of difficulty trying to keep in contact here right now. This is the man who was on the attack just a few moments ago, Konechny. But in fact, if that group of 4 riders can go off the front in the lead, they may well just steal the victory away from the rest of the men in this group, because once they reach the top of this climb, there's a long, tricky technical descent down to the valley below, around about 5 or 6 kilometers of flat, and then we kick up the last 1.5 kilometers to the finishing line in Huy.
Well, there's the gradient sign for those going down this hill. But the tempo here, it looks to me like we have a lot of tired riders in that group. They don't seem to have the legs at all to break it up.
But they're right there. They're right on the tail of the 4 men.
Yep.
The work is being done by Tacconi Sport, obviously trying to set something up for Dario Frigo. I thought, in fact, the main field had switched off, but it's amazing how you find that this speed is so deceptive. A kilometre to go to the summit, 13 kilometres to go to the finish, and I would say the advantage not very much more than 4 or 5 seconds.
They'll be looking to be still clear at the summit now. Now there's the front view of Cedric Vasseur. He's the son of Alain Vasseur, who used to ride for the Beek team and was a Tour de France rider. And now we're looking down, and it looks as though these 4 riders have cracked slightly as they continue towards the summit of the penultimate climb of the... Oh, sorry, we're looking at the back of the field there. They're slipping away from what is now left of a fragmenting peloton, but there are the 4 leaders, as now the gaps are being bridged with big sprints, and Fassa Bortolo look to be launching a group attack.
Another move coming forward right here. Everybody wants to keep it together. Michael Bogert again for Rabobank, trying to get himself off the front. A good move by him. We're very close now to the summit of this climb, and then the very dangerous, tricky descent. Moving forward, Fassa Bortolo are up there as well.
Well, this is one-on-one here now, because it looks as though Francesco Casagrande, who we haven't seen really since he was in the lead when we went over the Huy right at the start of this race, in about 3rd or 4th place. And Bogart here just also trying to see who is going to give him a hand out. Brylant is back in the picture. There is Casagrande. Serious effort, this one, to try and make one last final attempt to break up this tenacious bunch of bike riders today. There's Dave Brylant still persisting.
Well, that would be great for Francesco Casagrande, the winner of this race 2 years ago when he beat Rick Verbrugge to the summit of the climb and Laurent Jalabert into 3rd place. It would indicate that he's in fine form right now. His team, there he goes, moved by Casagrande.
Swinging out wild there. What a good bike race this has been without having a breakaway, because we've really been in the heart of the action with these cameras, seeing how hard these riders are racing. Over the top of the climb, the yellow motorbike getting second place. No, we're back with the race. Here we are. And Casagrande's attack has been monitored. Bogart looks across at him and they just look almost exasperated. We're making all this effort and we're going nowhere.
I think everybody is totally surprised by the way this race is unfolding. Casagrande would have expected to launch himself off the attack and not have anybody sit on his wheel, but he's found a situation where everybody can mark him.
Rylance again on the front. More riders coming through. Another attack through on the inside here, and this is the way this race has gone. One attack after another. Surely somebody at some time is going to make this work. This is the Once rider, and I can't quite spot who it is at the moment, but he's launched an attack, and if he can get away, it might be Acevedo. We'll see when we get down there. A helicopter giving you a span across the front of the peloton here. Very fragmented, but so tenacious. They're all clawing the way back. This is life at the back of the race here just now. And sitting on the back for the moment at least, number 215, Patrice Algon. Himself a pretty good bike rider. Wins will come his way, I'm sure, later this year.
There is Cedric Vasseur, who just a few moments ago, Phil, was actually on the attack. It just goes to show how quickly the front end of this bike race can change.
Well, we can't keep up with it today, and the boys are not getting away. They're just giving a lot of effort, and they don't seem to be saving that much effort for the big race in a couple of days' time. Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Bugert once again launching the attack down the right-hand side. This guy has been absolutely superb today. He's never really got more than 10 or 15 meters off the front end of the main field, but he's certainly thrown a lot of attacks at this peloton.
Well, I think they must have swept up the Once rider who went momentarily, because our bikes are staying here. But another man, just one man sits up, another man has gone, and they sit up as well, because they're all getting frustrated now. Every time there's an attack that are all the whole race following, they're just getting nothing working for them at all.
Looks like a move by Mario Ertz there, the Lotto rider. There are a couple of Lotto riders in this group, but he too, Phil, he hasn't got more than 2.5 meters off the front.
Well, the bunch has got smaller, that's for sure. Marchand at the moment, as Mario Ertz starts to go now. Coffert is jumping onto his back wheel. Once rider again claiming third slot. Remember that the climbs are over now, except the finish climb. 10 kilometers to go, that sign down there. And we've got 3, 6, 7 riders, 8 riders, and Derby Pan left. And I think you'll find we've got all the riders.
Well, I don't like to predict too many things, but I think this group is going to go to the bottom of the climb altogether right now. Number 2, it was Mario Ertz who went out on the attack, but there's still a lot of riders. You see, it's so strange. I've very rarely seen a bike race, Phil, where the riders keep looking backwards. They really don't have the confidence that they're going to open up the gap over the rest of the main field.
That's how I used to race, Paul, because I was never in such a position. Marcus Serrano, there he is in the Once colours, driving at the front. Plenty of riders willing to work. They've got a split here. If they can keep the pressure on, they might take a small group to the front of the climb at Huy, because we're only 9 kilometers from it. We'll certainly go downhill, back down to the bottom of the main road, and then we'll be heading into town. And this is a most interesting little break at last, shall we say. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 riders trying to get clear here now.
But watch out, because I don't think the main field is too very far behind these men. It's a tricky descent off the top of this climb, a very technical one with 1 or 2 dodgy corners. There's another rider coming across, 2 or 3 riders. In fact, I think that is the remnants of the group. And once again, we're going to have a very large group all together. This really is quite remarkable for a tough bike race like the Fleche Wallonne, which we normally see a group of 5 or 6 contesting the finish.
You see, as soon as the back group got on, this guy attacked again. I think it's Bryland's gone again. That's a very good tactic. You wait until they get on, and then they see an attack off the front, and they get demoralised because they've just made a huge...
This is Axel Mercs. Great move. Come on, Axel. He
almost came into the living room with us then, didn't he? He's gritting his teeth. This is Axel Mercs now who's gone out on the attack, and it might be the move.
Well, this is a good move by Axel. He would love to win this bike race. His dad went absolutely ballistic a couple of years ago, Phil, when Axel finished 7th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and that was back in 1996 when Armstrong was 2nd. Mario Ertz has joined him, 2 Belgians at the front of the bike race. Somebody else is clawing their way across once again. It looks like one of the Euskaltel-Euskadi riders has made the gap as well.
Well, the only man who's been active for them is Unai Echevarria, and it is him. He's got across the gap now. There's a Mappe rider made it too, and that is Andrea Noe. So 4 strong men here, well worth a name on the palmarès list of Fleche Wallonne. All 4 of them here now, trying to go clear. Is this the move, I ask?
Well, I wonder, this would be great if Axel Mercs could get himself into this breakaway situation. He's a great bike rider, Axel, and Eddie Mercs very often says to us he cannot believe how hard his son trains and how dedicated he is to the sport. Eddie was a super talented bike rider. He used to put thousands of miles of training in, but I've seen Axel on a training camp get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, work out on the weights, and then go out on a training ride with the rest of the team. He really does have to do everything he can to try and succeed. But there are 2 more men now trying to get across the gap. Now, this would be a good-sized group. We do, once we get off the climb here, Phil, have a long, flat section of 6 or 7 kilometres. Yeah. And, in fact, now I think they've broken the camel's back. Well,
one attack after another for hour after hour. And finally, we've got a little group of riders clear. But look at this surge from the front of the group again. Launching riders, remember we've got Mario Ertz, Unai Echevarria, Andrea Noah, and the man that started it all, Axel Mercs, now with a lead of a few seconds. We might be able to work it out if we pan left there. That is a nice little breakaway now when we find them. That is, there they are, because they're coming down. That's a very tight Hairpin Bend. Has caused problems in the past, and we're going to get a better look at it here as we go round it here with the back of the peloton, and Marcus Serrano sitting on the back. Brake hard, go round tight and kick out of the saddle as we're going down to the main road now. Then there's going to be a desperate chase down that main road into the town of Huy, and then it's all uphill to the finish.
Well, it's far from over right now. The man at the back here,
Acevedo.
He really didn't take that corner very well at all. It is Jose Acevedo ticking onto the back. These men, Phil, cannot give up now. They cannot work. They have to work together rather than watch each other tactically. They have to combine their efforts. Otherwise, we'll see that group behind coming back up to make contact, because they are not very much more than 20 seconds in arrears right now as we go past the banner indicating it's not very much further than 3 or 4 kilometers to go.
Well, Acevedo and in fact, we've swelled up to 6 riders here because Bartoli has got across as well on that descent. We never saw him go across at all, but now we have 6 men here.
Oh, this is bad. Bartoli sitting on right now. He's trying to get Andrea Noe to work here, but this is a real conflict of interest for the Italians. Very often in the past, the Italians used to work together, but there's a huge battle now to be the supreme leader of the Italian cycling, and this is good for Mercs. Mercs looking over his shoulder, seeing the gap, using that tactic now to put his head down, keep the advantage going, and they've split the group and forced Bartoli into a second part of that split.
Well, the trouble with the Italians, you know, Paul, if they can't win, they'll stop another Italian winning. That's their attitude. They almost destroyed themselves completely in last year's World Championships. It certainly cost them a real straight shoot at the world title.
It cost a lot of riders their friends as well. Yes. There is the group behind. They're about 15 seconds in the rear. There was one rider just egging his way across. A small group of 2 there now trying to get off the front end of this group, but we'll see some organisation. Mario Ertz of Team Lotto, he's putting an awful lot of effort in to drag himself back up to the Mercs group. Second there in line, Michele Bartoli. Fantastic position of that Italian. He gets so low down on the bike. They call him El Gatto, the cat, because he learns to pounce on the attacks. Andrea Noe in 6th position. Now we have 6 riders once again leading this race. Mario Ertz, the teammate of last year's winner. Jose Acevedo getting information from the team management behind. I don't think there is any information to pass up right now. The only information I could give is ride as hard as you can.
That's not bad information right now as we're running out of miles. At 3 kilometers to go, just under 2 miles to the finish. The gap is 26 seconds. This might be good enough now, but they can't relax at this stage of the day. A little bit of excess baggage being chucked off there by Echevarria. The souvenir hunters will snaffle that when this race has gone through. Mario Ertz of Lotto replacing his teammate Rick Verbrugge, who won this race last year, now in the breakaway for Lotto. Acevedo flicks his right arm there. That's to call others through to come and set the pace. Doesn't seem too many takers now. In fact, Echevarria more interested in who's going to close the gap. He's forcing Andrea Noah and Michele Bartoli. I'd watch the 2 Italians because they're sitting around the back now marking one another, and they won't take this to the finish without doing something.
They need to work. In fact, it's a bit strange to see Michele Bartoli's attitude right now. He's the best man with a chance of winning this bike race. He needs to put some energy into staying clear off the front end of the main field. 26 seconds to the group behind. I would expect to see Bartoli invest some energy into this, and Axel Mercs there trying to get Echevarria to come forward as well. Axel and the Lotto rider there, Mario Ertz, they've done a lot of work to make the success of this breakaway right now. Mercs looking very good on his machine as we go back to the second group on the road. They're working hard right now to try and pull themselves back up, but this is a huge group really for a race like Fleche Wallonne to be charging down for the possibility of victory. There are the 6 leaders. They're now not much more than 2.5 kilometers from the finish line.
Well, Axel's dad won this race 3 times. The last time was in 1972. Wouldn't it be nice today to cheer Axel over the finishing line in first place? I think Eddie would agree anyway. Looking at the breakaway, it took such a lot of hard work to get this attack going. They've got it going now. We're in the streets of Huy.
Well, Bartoli did a lot of work. Now it's an attack from Mercs.
That's Mercs gone. Good move by Axel, because he's got to climb away from the race. He's not going to beat them in the sprint, such as it will be up this climb. It's just a strong man slog to the line once we hit it. And Axel Mercs has made a great move. Is there going to be a reaction?
Well, there's no reaction there from Mario Ertz, the Belgian, looking over his shoulder. He's saying, if you want to win the Italians, you've got to come forward. It looks like Michele Bartoli has taken up the chase there right now. And I can imagine that at this moment, Eddie Mercs must be going absolutely ballistic.
Oh, you can bet your life, but there is a counter-attack, and we're about to start the climb here. There'll be just a flick right and up the hill very shortly. Mercs has got the gap all right, but it's got to hold it up at what is a cruel climb up to the line. When you climb the Huy, you come round the corner, we'll show you that shortly, and you look up, and that's why we call it the wall. It is really very, very steep. Mario Ertz has reacted very well here, bringing across Andrea Noe. So we're going to have 3 very, very shortly. Echevarria is at the back of the group just now. There's 3 up front, and we're into the last kilometre.
1,000 meters to go, and from just under this banner right now, Phil, the road turns to the right, and it is literally a wall in front of you. You go from the largest gear that you've got on this bicycle to the smallest gear in the space of about 20 meters. Mario Ertz now on the front, wearing number 2 for Lotto. His team are the defending champion. Then it's Andrea Noe. This is the former Belgian champion, Axel Mercs. Next in the white jersey there is the man who we expect to leap out of this group, Michele Bartoli. Unai Echevarria on the back in the orange jersey. Ooh, this climb, Phil, is going to hurt.
Well, Echevarria, watch out. He's a very good climber. He's a strong boy when it comes to an uphill finish. Mario Ertz is gambling by setting the pace here. Mercs, despite that attack, seems to still have some legs. Echevarria is the man I would expect an attack from, sitting back there so far down, as Acevedo now starts to move. We've not got to the wall, I was telling you. We move slightly right, and then we go left, and that's where it gets hard. Mercs beginning to show as though he might be losing ground here. Michele Bartoli, well, they don't call him the cat for nothing.
He's waiting to pounce. There's no sign of weakness at all there. The man setting the tempo on the front is still Mario Ertz. This is the best way to handle the climb if you can, because you are the one dictating the pacemaking. Andrea Noe there in second place. Acevedo came up a little bit. The main field is on the same climb, the finishing climb right now. They are still not much more than 20 seconds behind. Look at the crowd here right now. Mario Ertzville is still setting the tempo, and in fact, I think putting the others into a certain amount of difficulty.
Look at the face of Andrea Noe just behind. I think he's at full stretch. I don't think he can control that, so there's got to be a counter-attack. There it comes now. Echevarria is now making his move over the top of Noe. Mercs is in trouble now. I think he's paying for that attack. But this is an incredible springboard by the man at the front, Mario Ertz. I think of all 6, we would not have named him.
But you see how he went round the corners. That was information that came from his man, Claude Criquelion. He used the outside of the corners where it is not quite so steep, and he opened up the gap. It's not a big gap, but I think it may well just be enough. But watch out, Echevarria. He's cracked right now. You can see the Belgium is opening up a smart advantage. The men behind him are not going to catch. They're looking over their shoulders. They just want to finish in the top 6. The Belgian is going to get it.
Unbelievable. The Belgians have been out of this, their own classic, for more than a decade, until last year, when Rick Verbrugge scored for Lotto, and now Lotto are going to take it out again. Mario Ertz is clear. Echeverria must hang on in there if he can for second place. That'll be a great result for him, but the crowd are going to cheer this man all the way. Paul, it's such a long way when you're in the lead, but he's got it.
It doesn't look far when you look around the corner. We go from fixed camera to fixed camera, but I can tell you it is an awful long way to the summit of this climb. It may only measure out at 1,000 meters of climbing, but it seems to be forever. He now knows he's going to get it. He's just got to keep ticking those pedals over. He's got a great advantage, and very shortly the road will flatten out, but not by very much.
Big effort by Michele Bartoli. He's come over the top of the tiring Noé now. Mercs is going to best finish 6th in this group now after his attack. 4 3/4 hours in the saddle, and now he is literally a couple of seconds. He's on the line. Mario Ertz gets the victory. A very fast speed today, and in 3rd place will be Michele Bartoli. 4th is Noé. Acevedo comes in 5th, and thank heavens Mercs hung on for 6th place, but only just. Dario Frigo coming in 7th, and David Echeverria there in 8th. Michael Bogart 9th, and Casagrande in 10th. They're the order over the lines, and I'll tell you what, that was a superb effort there by the Lotto man.
It was a brilliant move, brilliantly timed. He actually took complete control on that climb there, setting the tempo and begging all of the other riders to try and challenge him. But the way he rode around the corners, he's obviously talked to his team manager, Claude Criquelion, about that beforehand, because he went round where the gradient, although not as steep, was just slightly easier on the inside of those curves.
And a huge bunch of riders there coming up just behind those 6 leaders. They almost did have a bunch sprint, didn't they? But this was the move. Look at his face here. Take a look at the second rider, because Noé cracked at this point and just realised it. It may be a sixth sense, but Ertz knew something and he went. And I think Unai Echeverria realised that Noé was no longer a contender. He had to make his effort. I don't think he wanted to make the effort quite this early. Well, this man knew what to do, and this is going to go down as his finest win.
A brilliant win for this man. Certainly a superb double for Team Lotto, because they got the victory last year with Rick Verbrugge, who didn't have a great day today. And just a couple of quick questions to Mario. Congratulations, a great ride. I was looking at my friend Rick last year, and I had a few words with him, and I was hoping that it would happen for me today. You went with Axel Mercs towards the end of the race, and it looks like you were trying to outwit the Italians. I wanted to go away for a long time, but I wasn't able to. And towards the end of the descent, we tried to get clear, but I was a little bit worried about Bartoli, that he wasn't working very hard, but obviously he wasn't so strong today. Did you really believe that you could win this race today? I never really thought that I could win. Claude Criquelion told me to just keep calm, just wait, just ride at your own speed. And then I used his tactic to use the outside of the road. And I don't think I could have gone any faster. But I noticed the others, they were dropped, and that was it.
Well, there it is. There is the result. Mario Ertz, who has finished 3rd and 5th in this race in previous years, has now got what he wanted. Top of the leaderboard ahead of Unai Echeverria and Michele Bartoli. As we look down here, some big names, of course. Names we will no doubt talk about. Lovely ride by Christian van der Velde there, coming up in 17th place. We've just seen him finish across the line. And Christian there doing a great ride. He'll be defending for Lance Armstrong, no doubt, in the Amstel Gold Race. So there we have it, a wonderful race today. He knew what to do. He took the advice of his team manager, who's won this race. In fact, he was number 3 Belgium to win this race since Rick Verbrugge and now Mario Ertz. And Claude Criquelion on the outside of that corner, which he did, and it paid off big time for him as he came up. There he is now on the podium. Michele Bartoli in 3rd place, Unai Echeverria in 2nd. This was an extraordinary race, no breaks to talk about, but what a marvellous attacking race it was. I think we might remember the 66th Fleche Wallonne. So as we look at the happy faces, this is Axel Mercs telling how it wasn't. Tried the break that mattered and it didn't work out, but if you don't try, sometimes you simply never succeed. So I hope you've enjoyed this coverage here. Another World Cycling Production video. And Paul Sherwin and I have enjoyed it. There's Bernardino, the crowd going away, probably making campsites now, ready for Sunday's Liège-Bastogne-Liège. We'll be there, and that's probably the next time we'll see you. For Paul and me, Phil Liggett, goodbye.